Join us as we dive into the wild world of government auctions and take you behind the scenes to uncover the cool and unique ways bidders from across America are utilizing the items they've won on Municibid. Like an ambulance repurposed into a work truck, to a city bus converted into an RV, and so much more. Welcome to the Municibid Podcast.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you this sunny day?
Good. It's nice to have spring arrive finally.
Yeah, it is. Tell me, Ryan, about your business, Kaniksu, and what you do.
Yeah, happy to. So Kaniksu is a local internet service provider. We're based in northern Idaho. We started out as what's called a fixed-base wireless operator, which means that we install a little dish or antenna on the side of your house, and then that dish or antenna points to a tower that we have somewhere a few miles away, and then we can provide internet service that way. But as we started to grow, we started to realize that there was a great opportunity to do more than just wireless internet, so we started doing fiber as well. Fiber, the way we do it is we bury it all underground, but every connection point we have to go through and connect everything, and then we also use that when we need to connect to the house. We've got all these different connection points that are a little bit tedious to get up and running. But anyway, so we've been doing that now for about 5 years, and we've really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the community.
Aaron, what got you started to create Kaniksu?
Kaniksu was a very selfish reason to get started. I wanted better internet for myself, and I couldn't find better internet myself. And I read an article randomly somebody sent to me, not related to starting an internet, but about a group in Western Washington, Orcas Island, or San Juan Islands, who had done something very similar, but they'd done it as a co-op just to help their neighbors get internet. And I'm like, well, that seems like that could work. So I kind of looked into it, and to make a long story kind of short, all the pieces kind of fell into place to kind of make this work. And I realized, though, if I'm going to go to all this trouble, it kind of ought to be a business because it's going to take up a lot of my time. And so I looked at it from how would I run this as a business, and started talking to the community, and found a lot of interest in the community to get better internet, and off we went. My crazy little story I like to tell is I put up some yard signs just kind of to see how interested people were. It took me about 30 minutes to get these yard signs set up out in the community. And they had it, so if you go to a website, you could sign up and say, I'm interested. I put the signs out, and I go back to my computer and I look, and there was already 2 people that had signed up in the 30 minutes I was away. So clearly there was some interest. So.
Oh yeah, and for us being in a small town, that's a lot of interest already in 30 minutes.
And over the course of about a week and a half, I lose track of time, we had about 90 to 100 people say they were interested. So we were pretty enthused and excited about that.
Brilliant.
So,
Yeah. And we have Kaniksu at our house, and we love it.
Great.
Thank you very much for creating this business, because you're absolutely right. It's a lot better than anything else available. So part of being an internet company, you're out there. You mentioned like digging fiber optic and putting the satellite, up at people's homes. So you need a work truck to do that. Can you tell us about what your needs were when you were looking to get a work truck?
Yeah, so we knew we wanted to get into the fiber optic business, and we knew, when we're doing just the antenna installs, we can do it with just a regular pickup truck, or even quite frankly, a SUV, sport utility vehicle would be great. But when we're doing the fiber, suddenly that changes everything. We have a lot of different pieces and parts we need to stock in there. We have a lot of different tools, and the biggest thing is we need to have it climate controlled, because the temperature that you're doing this work at will really make a difference in terms of how it splices, and also how easy the material is to work with. The fiber strands, they call it, themselves are to work with. And so we knew we wanted to get something that would work. A lot of people use trailers, they'll use vans, and I'd heard people talk about using an old ambulance, and I thought, well, that might be kind of a cool way to do it, but I never really gave it any serious thought. So we were looking at different sites or different places for equipment, and quite frankly, I was looking more at a bucket truck that we could use if we were going to be putting wire on poles, etc. And we found at the same auction we bought the bucket truck, we found an ambulance, and we just kind of thought, well, we'll bid on it and see what happens. We had our limit, and we wanted to see where it went, and at the end of the auction, we ended up being the winners of the ambulance. And it was really interesting when we went and picked it up. I'd never driven a emergency vehicle, and they had a police presence there right outside the facility, and I'm like, am I supposed to be doing anything with this? And so I stopped and I asked him, I said, should I be registering this? Do I need to do something different with the registration to make sure that I'm legal here? And he's like, nope, have a good day. So I drove home, and everything basically worked in there. We had the light bar, the sirens, all that stuff was still functional in the ambulance when we bought it. But of course it wasn't stuff that we necessarily needed, but it was fun, if you will, for a short period of time to kind of play with it. So
That's brilliant. Did you need a commercial driver's license to drive the ambulance?
no, not this one. It's small enough that we could register it as just well, you could register it as a private vehicle, but since it's a business vehicle, we did register it as a commercial vehicle in Idaho. And really the biggest designation that gave us is we could tow, I want to say it was up to 26,000, have a total weight with towing of 26,000 pounds. We're certainly not going to ever tow that much with it, but we kind of like the idea of having that flexibility, that we could tow something behind it and not have to really worry about if we were reaching a certain threshold that the state would have a problem.
So what kind of ambulance do you have here?
So what I have is a 1999 Ford F450. So it's the truck version of Ford truck, basically, Super Duty truck. They do make an ambulance. I've seen one floating around here. That's a van version, but the truck is the one that has all the towing capability with it. I think it's just a base model like XL or XLT truck. So real basic inside, but that's all they wanted anyway, since they were going to put the big box on the back anyway.
Can you tell me about what the ambulance, like the mileage and the hours, and what you were looking at, considering bidding on?
Yeah, so this is, when we bought it, it had about 98,000 miles on it. I don't remember the hours, but I knew it was relatively high. From our perspective, we were okay with the higher hours because we knew most of the time that vehicle was just going to be sitting there idle without a whole lot of load on the vehicle itself. Most ambulances, hurry up, get to a scene, maybe put a mile or 2 or 5 miles on the vehicle to get to that scene. Then they may spend an hour or 2 just idling while they're taking care of whatever needs to be done with the medical situation. That perspective, it's been pretty good. I've had a few repairs that we've needed to do, but they were all things that we were well within our risk threshold for it being an auction purchase. As an example, we had to do glow plug replacements. We are soon going to have to do some transmission work, but we got such a great deal at auction on it compared to what we would have paid for a comparable vehicle, whether it was an ambulance or something else, that we felt like those risks and those extra costs were worth it to us.
You talked about the weight limit with the vehicle and being able to tow. How much equipment are you storing inside of the vehicle? Was it important that you be able to store a lot of weight inside the vehicle as well as towing?
Weight, not so much. Most of what we're storing in there is fairly light. It's volume that we're more than anything. Connectors, extra cable, some tools, what we call enclosures, which is a waterproof box basically that goes in our little underground vault. That way, keeping all the water out of the connectors that we've installed. It's things like that. We have some tools in there, such as shovels and signs and ladders, but for the most part, it's not a whole lot of weight, which lends itself well if we do want to tow because we've got more weight available for towing. But no, we really haven't had to do a whole lot with heavy equipment in the ambulance itself. When we did our first project with the ambulance, we were still trying to figure things out, and we have what's called a reel trailer. We put the fiber on this trailer, and then you can easily spool it off. We actually, for a while, were towing that reel trailer with the ambulance, and I have some pictures. It was a really funny sight to see an ambulance with that big reel trailer behind it. So
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And you put that hitch to use already. You mentioned like climate control was really important. So the ambulance you won, the AC and the heating worked?
For the most part. I mean, any vehicle of that age and condition, there was going to be some things that went wrong with it, and we knew that going into it. The AC technically worked, but it wasn't really working that well. We just basically recharged the refrigerant, and I think we had to do one other thing. But yeah, it works really well now. It's especially nice in the summer when it's so hot out. I feel a little guilty at times if I'm in there working while my employee's outside, because I can sit in the nice air conditioning while he's out there pulling cable or doing whatever outside.
From when you picked up the ambulance to when you put it into like service, what was your process for getting it ready to put to work?
I wish I could say I had a really scientific process or a really well thought out process, but it was really, I guess the best way to say this is, we bought this as we were starting our very first ever fiber project. And so we were kind of winging everything as we went. We knew we wanted to use the ambulance. I guess before we even bought it, the very first thing we did is we kind of sat in and looked at it and said, okay, yeah, this seems like this would be comfortable enough. It has enough space in it that we could use the bench to work on. But then the next thing we did after that is look at, okay, what needed to be repaired to make it usable immediately. As an example, we had to replace all four batteries in the ambulance. We had to replace the alternators, and then we ended up needing to put new tires on it, and then we also wanted to make sure it was legal. We wanted to take advantage of the lights that it had, not the light bar, but the other lights around it. But the problem was, is to be legal, we couldn't be flashing red lights. And so we had to go and figure out who made the light lens covers, buy some that were amber instead, and replace all of them with amber. And then we also went through and disabled a few things that we were concerned about potentially being a problem, such as the siren. It's fun to play with, yes, but I didn't want that somebody bumping that in the middle of the street and it suddenly going off and either scaring people or people complaining that we were using them incorrectly. And so we just said, to be safe, we're going to disconnect those things. Beyond that, there were a couple other real minor things that we wanted to look at is, what tools did we want to put in there? But for the most part, it was about, let's go out there and try this. We did our very first enclosure vault, and we realized we don't have a really good way to secure the cable so it's not flapping all around. And so we went out and we bought a vise so we could put, mounted that in there. But it was just a lot of trial and error.
How long was it from when you picked it up to when it went out on its first job?
About 4 months. Most of that was not because of a lot of prep work for the ambulance. It was more of, we were just, like I said, getting started. A lot of the underground digging happened during those 4 months, and by the time we were ready to start using it, a lot of the underground had been done. So I want to say we probably started using it. We bought it in July, and we were probably using it consistently by late October and into November.
Nice.
So.
And you mentioned replacing 4 batteries. I'm imagining they were pretty big, like hefty batteries. So tell me more about like what the power situation is like and how you're using it for tools.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons that we wanted to buy the ambulance when we saw it. It has, I think it's 3 different locations in the ambulance where we can plug in AC power. So there's an inverter in there, and it can run, I want to say it's running 2,000, either 1,500 or 2,000 watts of power. Not to get too technical or geek out here, but that's essentially a home circuit is going to be, in your house is going to be 1,500 or 2,000 watts. And so we felt like we could run virtually anything we would need to in there. Whereas, most of the time when you take an inverter and plug it into your car or truck, you're going to be lucky to be able to power a laptop off of it or a computer off of it. And so the power, so we have equipment we're trying to charge. We have a heat gun sometimes we're using. In some cases we're drilling, and it's a variety of different tools we may be using, and having the versatility of the power has been really nice. So.
Have you ever, like through the process of working on a job, run out of power in the ambulance? Like drain the batteries? No,
we do keep the ambulance running whenever we're working in there, just so we don't have to worry about that. You could make an argument that you don't have to do that. It's got what's called an isolator in between the 2 sets of batteries. So in theory, I could run the house or the cabin batteries completely dead, but still start the vehicle up afterwards. But I've always worried that we're going to be burning them up too quickly, and so it just seems more prudent just to keep it running all the time. And for the most part, that's been fine. The trickiest thing that we've run into is there's an occasion where we've had to do something late at night, emergency repair or whatever, and we just try to be aware of the fact that we have neighbors who may be trying to sleep. And we've even had one case where the neighbor complained about the diesel exhaust. But overall, it's not really been a problem.
We're in North Idaho. We get snow. How has it been through the winter driving around?
That's going to be the one area that I wish it was different. It is just a two-wheel drive. It is a dually. Once we put new tires on, it handled a lot better in the snow, surprisingly well in the snow. However, we do keep chains in there, and with the chains on, it's fine. It's a pain sometimes to put the chains on, and especially if you're transitioning a lot between pavement and snow or ice. But it does make us a little bit nervous. One of the roads, as an example, I'm sure you're quite familiar with, is very steep, and the hill, generally we can get up, but we're always a little nervous about going back down just because of sliding. And so it does cause us to be a little bit more cautious about how we're using it in the winter time. For the most part, we're not doing a lot of construction in the winter, so it's not been a big deal. It's really been more about if we have to do any maintenance or repairs.
Yeah, I was curious because I've seen you up on the side when we still have snow, and I'm like, wow, we're doing pretty good with that ambulance up here.
Yeah, we generally also wait on a day where it's clear, we know it's not going to snow, and we wait till the county has sanded the road so that we have some traction. And like I said, overall it's done really well, especially since we put new tires on. With it being as heavy as it is, it does give us quite a bit of traction. But I would be lying if I said we never got it stuck. So,
you know, with an ambulance, it's quite a large vehicle. You've got, you know, more weight in the back. How has it been when you have gotten stuck to get it out of there?
We've only got it stuck once. Let me be very clear. It's not a serial or a habitual thing for us. But it really wasn't that bad. We just used the extra oomph of our one-ton truck to help pull it, you know, between what little traction we could get from the ambulance and then the one-ton pickup truck. It really wasn't that bad to get out. But we've also, like I said, we've tried to be pretty cautious about where we take it overall. Yeah, it's always been surprising to me because the ambulance served most of its life in Burlington, Vermont. And I would have assumed a place like Vermont would likely have had most of their vehicles with four-wheel drive. But they must do a really good job in Vermont of plowing and keeping the roads clear. So
I'm going to guess it was probably also driven on asphalt roads,
and not gravel roads.
The dirt roads that we've got here.
Yes,
that's going to be my guess.
I'm sure. So.
Yeah. Does your ambulance have a sink or any water?
No, and I'm kind of grateful about that. One thing we don't really necessarily need. It would be nice at times to wash our hands, but I would rather not have to deal with the potential maintenance issues that come from the extra features. So so no, we don't have that in there.
What is one of the features that you love the most about the ambulance as a work truck?
I think one of the biggest things that's been really nice for us is all the lights. And I don't mean the flashing lights, but it's got a bunch of what they call scene lights. And so it's just basically, you can really illuminate, especially at dark, the area around where you're working. And so what we end up doing is, you know, especially fall or spring when it's not quite late enough in the day, we can turn on those scene lights and we can see around us, open up our vaults and pull out the equipment. We can see how much water we've got in there that we're going to be sticking our hand in, whatever it may be. And you know, it really gives us a good work area that we can use. Those few times we've had emergency repairs as well, you know, we're fixing it whether it's day or night. And so having that area to be safer and just be able to see what we're doing has been really amazing to have.
And these lights, were they like the same ones that were installed when you picked up the ambulance, or did you have to modify the lights at all?
No, they were the same lights that were there when we installed it, or when we picked it up. Yeah, anyway, they're the same ones that were there, and they're just surprisingly bright. So
fantastic. Yeah. Do you have any tips or advice to people that are looking at purchasing an ambulance as a work truck for what they should consider while they're looking at ambulances?
The biggest thing is, if you can, do a walkthrough of it. Look for signs of rust. Ours is, I believe, mostly all aluminum bodied, at least the box itself is. But you can really see a lot by looking underneath, looking at the condition of the vehicle. You know, is it in a saltwater environment or salt environment where they're salting the roads during the winter? You know, just look for those types of things. When we got the ambulance, we didn't know it at the time, but we found the service records in there, and the fire department that had impeccable service records, and it kind of made me realize, we did just a rough tally, and I wish I could remember right now what that was, of the dollar amount that they spent on maintenance for that vehicle over the life that they had it. And I will take a little bit of, I want to say it was around $120,000 in maintenance that they spent on that vehicle. Now that to me was reassuring, I guess is maybe the best word I can come up with, that we weren't going to necessarily find a whole lot of major issues. Typically when you find an owner that has maintained a vehicle that well, they're catching a lot of things before they've been neglected to the point where they need a lot of work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan,
You're welcome.
for
Glad to
joining
do
us
it.
today and sharing your story. It's been really cool to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to the Municibid podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the world of government surplus, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts.